Hey, this is Dougie here from Plowman Studios. I've been working with one of my good friends, Phil Mafurage, who's a singing instructor online on a pop track. And he had a question for me about how I was getting a particular drum kit sound. I was going to make a video for him, but I thought it might be easy just to make something I can share with everyone. It's mainly around how to get the big 80s kind of sounding drum kits. And he was struggling to get the sound with Superior Drummer. And I've used a lot of the realistic drum libraries. I do use it when I'm making more music dependent on feel. And when I say feel, I mean more fine increments in the dynamics of the drums. But sometimes that just isn't right for the synthwave or the New Jack Swing, Teddy Riley kind of sound of the 90s. So I'll just take you through a quick walk through how to get a pretty good sound straight away, using a couple of free resources, but also using some paid resources. Very affordable and very worth it. So my DAW of choice is Cubase. And I'm just going to show you one of the plugins I'm mainly using. So I like to start with a VST instrument. And the drum sampler I'm using is called Poise. Poise I found about when I was just trying to look for something simple, something I could just drag wave samples onto drum pads and get it to work and make it sound awesome. Because I was sick of the overcomplicated things. Even battery, it's too complicated for most things. I just wanted something easy which I can route to a separate channel and affect all of the channels separately. So this is what Poise looks like. It has a browser here where you can bring up drum samples, load any waves in, or you can save drum kits within this program itself. So I'll just load up a drum kit I've made myself. And the way I've got this router at the moment, you can see it says output down here. This is going to each of the different channels. You know, up to 16 on one instrument there. So within Cubase, you have to actually enable these other outputs. Otherwise, you wouldn't have got any sound apart from my kicks there. So you can layer up to 7 samples per pad in this, and it's just 16 keys, so a bit over an octave. One octave and a third. And you just load up all the different sounds you want there. You can try and make it match with general MIDI if that makes it easier. If you're sequencing the drums in another program and you want to import the MIDI and have that there. I've done that for the most part, but there's a couple of extra hits, like the kicks and the snares are on pretty standard spots to what you normally would do. And I've just loaded that drum kit in there. I've actually got some settings as well that I put all the channels here, which I'll load up. Normally I'm running this across 2 monitors here, but I'm sharing with you the mix window there. So with Cubase you can save all of your routings and your settings there. And you can load them all at once. So it's got drums there. Now, I think the main difference actually between the New Jack kind of sound and the 80s synthwavy massive snare and toms, it really comes down to the reverb for the most part, but both are using gated reverbs. If you don't know what gated reverb is, it's like you put a reverb onto the signal, and then when the reverb dips below a certain volume threshold, instead of just naturally tapering off and smoothly cutting off like you would have with a natural reverb in a hall or something, it just snips it off. And they're usually compressed as well, so that you bring up the volume of the reverb even more, exaggerating it, making it larger than life, and then it's completely cutting it off. So you always hear this like a suction kind of sound, and it ends like that. Almost sounds like you're hitting white noise with a snare when you're doing it. Now, I'm using all free samples here. I'm pretty sure these are legal samples. There's someone who's gone through and made waves of pretty much every old drum machine. You can see all the models here. These are going to be familiar to some of you. This is based off like an Akai MPC style drum sampler, and it's got everything there, all these different samples, and you can click on here, you just click to hear it. This is a really no bullshit plugin. No bells and whistles really. You can change the pitch, you can change the phase with offset when you're layering different samples together to make sure you're not getting any phase cancellation there. It's minimal features, but it's just the right amount of features. And I'm just going to show you where you can get this from. There's actually a really cool Reddit page here, The Encounter, and it's got tutorials and discussions about synthwave. It's got a really good sticky page here, and I have a list of these 200 drum machines. So I'll include this link up there, but you can see it on the screen at the moment. I'll put it in the description below, and that's all the samples I've showed you there that have come up all along here. And this is the drum samples that were being used in the 80s for pop music, which is what this synthwave is going back to. It's really harkening back to that all the time. But it's also got a lot of the drum kits that were used in early hip-hop, rap, and especially that new jack kind of sound. So I'll just give you a little bit of a sample of what this kit's like. In terms of processing, there's not too much going on here. There's a little bit of boosting of some high end on kicks and a bit of sub, because back in the late 80s, the amount of sub in the bass drums wasn't quite what it is today. So you kind of got to up the game a little bit there. Give it a couple of extra dBs if you want that really, really low extending bass in your sub on the kick drums. So give a bit of a sample here. And you can see with this kick here, I've got 4 different kicks layered. There's quite different ones there. And I'm always going for a composite sound where you're not really getting too much overlap between the individual samples, but they come together to make this much thicker, much richer sound. I think that's the key to getting all these really good sounds, and they did use it back in the day. They'd play the same sequence through a couple of different drum machines and blend it together. This trick is as old as time. One of the great drum kits to go for first, I guess, these Simmons and Simmons claps. They're pretty ubiquitous in that kind of style of music. Man, look, you never would run out of drum samples if you want to do any 80s and 90s inspired stuff in here. And even just equalizing it, bringing it into the modern age with a bit more love and a bit of processing, man, this is such a good free resource of drum samples. Poise itself, I'll put a link below as well. Man, it's $50 US. It's an absolute bargain. But you might have heard of the Lynn samplers. Prince was using them a lot back in the day. This is like the go-to sound for the synthwave as well. And some of this, you'll find you kind of need to build a bit of a hybrid across different drum kits, because some of them have really, really nasty snares, for example. Really, really weak, no bottom end to the snare, no crack, which I'm definitely sure my friend Phil wasn't after. He's after something a bit beefier. So, Phil, check out this one here. This snare is a bit of a complicated mix. And all these samples actually were phase coherent. I didn't need to offset any of them. They didn't cancel out any of the bass when I combined them. And the overall sound is quite big. And I've got it. There's a bit. I'll take you through the kick quickly. So there's a pretty fat kick sound there. Now, I haven't got anything routed here in terms of reverb, so I think that's actually probably helpful to have here. So I'll just set up a send for that. I like to use Valhalla Vintage Verb a lot of times. It's just so easy to use. You don't even have to go out of the presets. Use gated reverbs here, large gated snare. Now, one of the things I don't really like with a lot of these reverbs by default is they leave a bit too much low end in, which you'll hear, especially with the snares here. So let's hear that one. Channel 3 is the one I've got to send through. It's a little bit muddy there for me. I'd like to roll up to about 200. Now, that's still a bit long there, I think, compared to what you would get on a lot of the 90s stuff. That's still a bit long as well. I think it's to do mainly with the shape here. Pretty epic sound there. It's all to do with the layering. So if you look down the bottom here, you can see some of the samples I'm using. If you get that drum sample kit, all the samples I'm using in there, just search on those file names, Typhoon, Typhoon C. Together it makes that. And that's a big, thick 80s, 90s sound there. Adjust the reverb to taste. That's some Phil Collins shit right there. Up to you guys what you want to use. This big verb one I had before. That's pretty 80s. It doesn't have as much of that harsh cutoff with the gated sound, which you might want. It's important also to get your toms in on the business as well. So let's just route them quickly. So I normally just send the snares and toms to the same verb, and maybe just in different levels, usually a little bit less of the toms to the send. That way it keeps it in the one unified space and it's not too cluttered with the reverbs, because reverb does take up a lot of the frequency spectrum. So have a listen to this one. And instead of having just the basic kit elements, a lot of that more 90s sound comes more from the swung beat. No one needs more cowbell. Yeah, it's up to you really how you want to lay this up, but get on Valhalla Vintage Verb. It's not very expensive. It's less than $100. Poise under it's $50 US, and all those drum samples are free. There might be something else like Poise out there. I use Poise. It's honestly, it's fucking great. And yeah, color your reverb to taste. That's a fucking massive sound. Hope that's helpful for any of you guys out there who are into making synthwave, trying to get more of those 80s inspired sounds. Hopefully it's giving you somewhere to go with samples. There's barely any EQ done here. What it really comes down to is listening through the samples, and when you hear something which fits that sonic picture, or even part of the sonic picture, like when I was scrolling through these snares, I hear that there and I think, oh, that's a good bit of white noise to the snare. That's almost got a bit of tom level attack to it. It's just really, that comp sound of those two there is just thickening up. It's almost like a chorus of the same sound. That's some more white noise and some tail. That just sounds 90s as fuck. A little bit higher. So you've got some different pitches there. I know some people like to try and match up the pitch of all the samples they're using, but sometimes if you don't do that, it gives you a much bigger sound. I think that's where sometimes these snares are really, really small. It's huge. That's Oprah, baby. This has been Plowman Studios. Check out some of our other videos if you want to look at some stuff on music theory, music production. Head on over to plowmanstudios.com/free-ebook to get a book on guitar scales and scales in general called Every Scale You Need to Know. It'll help you with writing any music, understanding the chords that go in different keys, and how to navigate things when you're doing improvisation. I hope that's been helpful, guys. See you later.